A little girl's hands slammed flat on the store counter. Coins flew everywhere, rolling across the floor, dropping off the edge, spinning under strangers' feet. She dropped to her knees and chased everyone. Her fingers were shaking. People stepped around her. Nobody stopped. The cashier stood with her arms folded and watched. The girl got back up, stacked the coins and counted again. Still not enough. She looked at the can of soup on the counter. She looked at the coins in her palm. Her lips started to tremble. That was the moment a man walked through the front door. Nobody in the store knew who he was. His name was Bruce Lee. He saw the girl. He stopped walking. He stood completely still for 3 full seconds, and then he did something nobody expected. What did Bruce Lee do that left an entire store speechless? Stay with me on this one. Her name was May. She was 8 years old. She had been waking up before sunrise every morning for the past 3 weeks. Her mother was in the back bedroom. The cough had started as something small, a scratchy throat, a tickle. Then it got worse. Then the fever came. And once the fever came, it stayed. May's mother, Lynn, had worked at a laundry on Broadway ever since they arrived in Los Angeles from Hong Kong. 6 days a week. She never missed a day. When the fever knocked her flat, she pushed through it for 4 more days before she couldn't get out of bed anymore. By the time she finally stopped fighting it, the medicine money was nearly gone. There was no father in the picture. No grandparents nearby. There was a neighbor, Mrs. Huang, who checked in when she could. But Mrs. Huang was old and had her own troubles. The weight of the apartment fell on May. She knew how to heat soup. She knew how to refill the water glass by the bed. She knew which pharmacy on the corner was open late and which one wasn't. She had learned all of this in 3 weeks at 8 years old, and she had learned it without anyone teaching her. She just watched what needed doing and did it. That morning, she had gone through the apartment looking for coins, under the sofa cushions, inside the winter coat hanging by the door, in the small ceramic bowl on the kitchen shelf where her mother kept loose change. 43 cents under the cushions, a dime inside the coat, a nickel and 3 pennies in the bowl. She stood at the kitchen table and counted it out twice. 61 cents. The cheapest can of soup at the corner store was 65 cents. She went anyway. The store was called Sun Market. It was on North Spring Street, 4 blocks from the apartment. May had been going there her whole life. But the previous year a man named Gerald Marsh had bought into the business. A big man with a wide chest who wore short-sleeved shirts and kept a pen tucked behind his ear. He had put new prices on everything. The can of soup that used to cost 50 cents now cost 65. May walked in, took the soup from the shelf and brought it to the counter. She laid the coins down and began counting them out loud, the way her mother had taught her. 61 cents. She told the cashier she was 4 cents short. She asked if she could bring the rest back tomorrow. The cashier, a young woman named Patricia, looked at the coins, then at the girl. She said she couldn't do that. Store policy. May didn't argue. She just stood there, stacking and unstacking the coins with her small fingers, trying to find a way to make 61 become 65. That was when a few coins slipped off the edge and hit the floor. And that was when Bruce Lee walked in. Now, you need to understand something about Bruce Lee at this point in his life. He was 31 years old. He had just wrapped production on a film in Hong Kong, a film that would go on to change martial arts cinema forever. He was back in the United States for a stretch, handling business meetings, staying in a house in Westwood with his wife Linda and their kids. He was not famous yet. Not in the way he would become. The film wasn't out. A television project he had hoped to front had been passed over. He was known in certain circles, in gyms among people who followed martial arts, but to a grocery store on a Tuesday morning, he was just a man in a plain shirt walking through the door. He was there to buy ginger. That was it. Linda had asked him to pick some up on his way back from a meeting nearby. He was heading toward the produce section when he heard the coins hit the floor. He stopped. He turned. He saw a little girl on her hands and knees, chasing pennies across the linoleum. He did not keep walking. Bruce crouched down next to her. He didn't say anything at first. He just picked up the 2 coins that had rolled near his feet and held them out. The girl looked up. She had a serious face, the kind you see on children who have been managing too much for too long. She took the coins. She said thank you. He asked what she was trying to buy. She pointed at the counter. Soup. For my mother. He stood up with her and walked to the counter. He looked at the coins stacked next to the soup can. He looked at Patricia. He didn't make a speech. He reached into his pocket, put a dollar bill on the counter and said, "Ring it up." Patricia looked at him. She looked at the money. She rang it up. The change came back. Bruce pushed it toward May. "Keep it." Then he turned and walked to the back of the store for the ginger. Now here's the thing. He could have left it there. $1. Kind gesture. Done. Most people, even decent people, would have done exactly that and walked out feeling just fine about themselves. But Bruce picked up the ginger root, turned around, and walked back to the front. The girl was still at the counter. She had the soup in her hands. She was looking at the change from his dollar, coins lined up on the counter, not sure if she was supposed to take them. He said, "Those are yours." She looked up at him. "My mother is sick." Not as a plea, just as a fact. The way a child states something that has been sitting inside them for a long time with nowhere to go. Bruce Lee looked at this girl for a moment. Then he walked back into the store. He came back with a basket. He moved through the aisles slowly and deliberately, picking things up. A second can of soup, a bag of rice, crackers, a jar of broth, tea, fever medicine from the small health section near the back. He brought the basket to the counter and set it down next to the ginger. The other shoppers had been watching all of this. An older woman near the vegetables had stopped moving entirely. A man by the bread shelf was looking over his shoulder. Patricia had her eyes wide. Bruce told Patricia to add it all up. $9.30. He paid cash. He asked for 2 bags. He packed them himself, heavy items on the bottom, the medicine on top where the girl could see it. He folded the tops of the bags over and set them in front of May. She was watching him with an expression that was hard to read. Not joy exactly. More like someone who had been holding their breath for 3 weeks and was only just beginning to exhale. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know," he said. He asked if the bags were heavy. She said yes. He said he had time. They walked toward the door together. This small girl and this quiet, compact man carrying a bag in each hand. The shoppers watched them go. Patricia had both hands on the counter. Nobody said a word. He pushed the door open with his shoulder. The morning air came in, and for one brief moment, standing there in that doorway with grocery bags in his hands and the sun coming through the glass, everything felt settled. The right thing had been done. The girl had what she needed. You could almost feel the whole room exhale. That was the moment Gerald Marsh stepped out from behind the back partition. He was the co-owner. He was a big man, well over 6 feet, broad chest, a voice built to fill a room. He had been watching through the gap in the partition. He had been watching the whole time. He pointed at May. "Hold on," he said. "I know that girl." The room went still. "She was in here 2 days ago," Marsh said. "I watched her take a candy bar off that rack and put it in her pocket. Never paid. Never came back." He looked at Patricia. "I told you to write it up." Patricia said she had. Marsh looked at May. "I've got a record of it. Right there in the book." He let that sit for a moment. "She's a thief." He said that word like he intended it to land somewhere. And it did. May's face went from relief to terror. Bruce Lee set the grocery bags down. He set them down carefully. He didn't throw them. He didn't slam them. He placed them on the floor beside the door, straightened up and turned around. "A candy bar," he said. Marsh looked at him for the first time. Really looked at him. He didn't know who this man was. He just saw someone in his way. "That's right," Marsh said. "Store property. I'm calling the police." Now here is where this stopped being about soup and started being about something else entirely. Because what Marsh was threatening, whether he fully understood it or not, was this. An 8-year-old girl whose mother was lying sick 2 blocks away, who had been carrying her household alone for 3 weeks, was about to have a police report filed on her. A report meant a record. A record meant social services could be notified. And if social services came and found a sick woman alone with a child who had been managing everything by herself? Believe me, everyone in that room understood what was at stake. Even May understood. You could see it in her face. She wasn't just scared of getting in trouble. She was scared of losing the only thing she had. Bruce looked at her. Then he looked back at Marsh. How much was the candy bar? Marsh blinked. What? The candy bar. How much? Marsh looked at Patricia. Patricia said, 15 cents. Bruce reached into his pocket and put a quarter on the counter. Take it out of that. It's not about the money, Marsh started. It's always about the money, Bruce said. That's the only reason to involve the police over 15 cents. The debt is paid. You have your money. There's no crime. Marsh's face went red. He said that wasn't how the law worked. He said theft was theft. He said he ran an honest business and wasn't going to be told how to run it by someone who walked in off the street. He said he was still calling. He reached for the phone behind the counter. Bruce didn't move toward him. He turned and looked at the room. He looked at every person standing in that store. The woman near the vegetables. The man by the bread. 2 teenagers by the door who had been watching with their mouths slightly open. An older man in the back who had stopped moving entirely. He spoke to all of them. Not loud. He didn't need to be loud. Does anyone here believe this child deserves to have the police called on her? Nobody answered. I'm asking. The woman near the vegetables said, quietly, no. The man by the bread shook his head. One of the teenagers said, come on, man. To nobody in particular. Marsh had the phone receiver in his hand. He looked at the faces around the room. He looked at Patricia, who had taken a small step back from the register. He looked at Bruce Lee, who was standing in his store like he had nowhere else to be and no intention of moving. Marsh put the phone down. I want her out of my store. If you're still with me at this point, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This is the part of the story most people never hear. Bruce picked up the grocery bags. He nodded toward the door. They walked outside together. He set the bags down on the sidewalk and crouched to the girl's level. She was trembling, not from the cold. He said, you did nothing wrong. She looked at him. Her eyes were dry. She was not going to cry. She had decided that somewhere in the past 3 weeks. But her jaw was tight. He's going to say that about me, she said. He's going to tell people. Let him say it. The people in that room saw what they saw. And you know what you did and why you did it. That's all that matters. She turned that over in her mind. Then she picked up one of the bags. He picked up the other. They started walking. The walk took 12 minutes. May led the way. She moved fast for a small kid. She had been making this trip alone for weeks and she had it down. Down North Spring, left on Ord, up the stairs on Alpine. Bruce followed without hurrying her. She talked while they walked. Not about the store. She seemed to be putting it behind her with every step. She talked about her mother. How the cough started. How Lynn kept trying to get up and couldn't. How the coughing at night was the hardest part, because there was nothing May could do about it, so she just lay in the dark and listened. Bruce listened. He didn't offer advice. He didn't interrupt. He just walked next to her. At the building on Alpine, she pushed open a heavy door and led him up 2 flights. She had her own key. She used it with the focus of someone who understood that this lock was her responsibility. Inside, the apartment was small and very clean. The dishes were done. The floor had been swept. A wet cloth was folded on the counter. She had been making compresses for the fever. He hadn't expected that. He wasn't sure what he had expected, but not this level of order. Wait here, May said. She took her bag to the kitchen and put the groceries away. Methodical about it, deliberate about where each thing went. She set the medicine on the counter by itself, separate from everything else. Then she went to the bedroom door and knocked softly. Mama, I'm back. A weak voice came through the door, in Cantonese, asking if she'd gotten the soup. Yes, May said. And more. She said it quietly, like she didn't want to make a thing of it. Bruce stood in the main room. He looked at the small table by the window with 2 chairs. He looked at the shelf above the sink. A few books, a clay fish, a handful of coins in a ceramic bowl. He looked at the drawing taped to the wall next to the bedroom door. Pencil lines, a child's hand, a woman standing in a garden. He thought about what it means to be far from your home country with nothing beneath you to catch a fall. He thought about what it does to a child, to grow up fast because the situation leaves no other choice. He thought about his own daughter, Shannon, who was 2 years old and had never had to worry about anything. He went to the kitchen and put water on for the broth. He found the pot. He started the soup. May came out of the bedroom and stopped. She watched him at the stove. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know," he said. She sat at the table and watched him cook. After a while she said, "Who are you?" He said his name. She turned it over. "Are you a cook?" He laughed. A real one, surprised out of him. He said no, he wasn't a cook. He said he made films. "Like in the cinema?" "Like in the cinema." She considered this with the same serious expression she had worn all morning. Then she said, "My mother likes films. She used to take me on her day off." He said, "When your mother is better, you should both go." May said, "Yes." He poured the broth into a bowl and brought it to the bedroom door. He knocked lightly. The door opened a few inches. He set the bowl on the small table just inside. Through the gap he could see a thin woman in bed, eyes open, looking at him with confusion and something close to alarm. He said in Cantonese, "I am a friend of your daughter's. Please rest. The soup is there when you're ready." The woman looked past him at May, who gave a small nod. The woman said, in Cantonese, "Thank you." He pulled the door shut. He went back to the kitchen and cleaned up. He washed the pot. He dried the counter. He arranged the remaining groceries so May would know where everything was without having to search. Then he said he had to go. May walked him to the door. He stepped out into the hallway. She held the door and said, "Mr. Lee." He turned. "The man in the store," she said. "He really is going to say those things about me, isn't he?" It wasn't quite a question. Bruce said, "Maybe. People like him usually do." He paused. "But you went to that store to feed your sick mother. You stood at that counter and tried to find a way. That's not what a thief does. That's what someone does when they love the people they're taking care of." He looked at her steadily. "Don't let someone else's words change what you know you did." May held the door and thought about that. Then she said, "Okay." He said goodbye. He walked down the 2 flights of stairs and out through the heavy door and back onto Alpine Street. He came back the next day. He brought a man named David Kwan, a doctor, a friend from the Chinese community in Los Angeles who made house calls when the situation called for it. Bruce hadn't explained much on the phone. He just said there was a woman who needed looking at and asked if David could come. David came. The diagnosis was a serious chest infection, the kind that, left untreated, turns into something much worse. It had been going on long enough that it needed proper medication right away. David wrote the prescription. He called in a favor at a clinic nearby to have it filled at no charge. Lynn was sitting up in bed when David explained all of this to her. She listened carefully. She thanked him. Then she looked past him to Bruce, who was standing in the doorway. She said, in Cantonese, "You came back." He said, "I told your daughter I had time." Lynn had heard about the store. May had told her everything the night before, quietly, thinking her mother was asleep. Lynn had been awake. She heard the whole thing. She said to Bruce, "That man has been trouble before. He does this. He picks on people who can't push back." Bruce said, "I know the type. You fought back for her." He said, "Not exactly. I just didn't walk away." She looked at him for a long moment. "That is fighting back," she said. "Most people walk away." He had no answer for that. He just nodded. He stayed a while longer. He sat at the small table by the window while May did what she always did. Straightened the cushions, refilled the water glass, checked on her mother. He watched her move through the apartment. The same girl who had been chasing pennies across a linoleum floor 12 hours ago, running the whole operation without complaint. Before he left, he put an envelope on the kitchen table. He didn't say anything about it. He didn't explain what it was for or who should use it. He just left it and said goodbye. May found it after he was gone. She counted what was inside. It was enough to cover 2 weeks of groceries, the prescription, and a little extra. She folded the envelope and put it in the ceramic bowl on the shelf, the same bowl where her mother kept loose change. Lynn was well enough to sit up within a week. Walking to the kitchen within 2. She was back at the laundry on Broadway within the month. Gerald Marsh did tell people that May had stolen from his store. He told a few of the other shop owners on the block. But the people who had been inside Sun Market that morning told a different version. Word in a neighborhood travels. By the end of that week, most people in that corner of the city had heard both sides. They chose the one they had seen with their own eyes. Sun Market lost a significant portion of its regulars that month. Marsh sold his share of the business before the year was out. Mrs. Fong bought him out. She had been saving for 2 years, waiting. The store went back to its old prices. May grew up in that apartment. She went to school nearby, then to a high school downtown, then to a nursing program at a community college. She worked in a hospital for 30 years. She never forgot the man who had carried 2 grocery bags up Alpine Street without being asked. She didn't know who Bruce Lee really was. Not until she was a teenager. A classmate was talking about Enter the Dragon and mentioned the name. May went still. She went home and told her mother. Lynn was quiet for a while. Then she said she had recognized him from some photos she'd seen. She had not told May at the time because she didn't want to make a thing of the name. She wanted May to remember the man. May told the story later, to her own children, to some of her patients, once to a young woman crying in a hospital waiting room whom May sat next to and stayed with for half an hour. She didn't always say it was Bruce Lee. Sometimes she just said it was a man she met when she was a child. The point of the story, the way May always told it, was never really about who he was. It was about one thing. He heard the coins hit the floor, and he turned around. That was the beginning of everything that followed. A stranger heard a small sound in a grocery store and turned toward it instead of away from it. He set the bags down. He stayed. He came back. He didn't make a speech about it. He didn't need anyone to see him do it. He just didn't keep walking. She thought, in her older years, that this was probably the most important thing one person could do for another. Not the grand gesture. Not the dramatic stand. Those matter, and that day in the store they mattered. But before all of that came something simpler. A small sound. A choice to turn toward it. That was what he did. That was the whole of it.